presentation. Today, she will present a 10 to 12-minute speech from Level 1, Evaluation and Feedback Number 2. Jackie Bailey has been a member of Toastmasters since 2007. Today, she will share her leadership journey and make a case for belonging to Toastmasters. Jackie hopes you will be inspired by the organization's ability to change and save lives. Presenting the case for Toastmasters, Distinguished Toastmaster Jackie Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. It was 13 years ago this month. I was at the Speaking Consulting Network annual conference in South Carolina. And I had just started a business called Emerald City Consulting. It was a dental management consulting firm because I had been in dentistry for many years. And in contacting an icon of the industry about working for her as a dental consultant, her name was Linda Miles, she said, "You don't need to work for me. You can do it yourself." And she invited me to come to this conference of a group of people she belonged to. I sat there in the audience that day listening to a keynote speaker. Her name was Jeannie Robertson. She was about 6 feet tall, 3 inches, a former Miss North Carolina, and she had this real thick, slow North Carolina accent as she spoke. And she told the most amazing stories that were so funny. And yet at the same time, they would become so inspirational. And I had never experienced anything like that before. I wondered, how could someone take me on such a ride that would help me to feel so many different emotions in one particular speech? Unlike myself, I pushed my way through the audience when she finished her presentation so that I could talk to her. And that was the question I asked her. How did you do that? She said, "Well, I speak a lot because I belong to the National Speakers Association. But if you want to be a better speaker, Jackie," what she said, "you need to join Toastmasters." And of course, I asked the golden question, what's Toastmasters? And because Jeannie Robertson told me it's an organization I should look into. As soon as I got home from that conference, I did a search and found a Toastmaster club a little more than a mile from where I lived at the time in Sammamish. And I went to that meeting on a Tuesday night, knowing that it didn't matter if they bit heads off of chickens and spit them out. I was going to join that club because Jeannie Robertson told me that's what I needed to do to be like her. At that meeting, I believe I met Kevin there eventually. I don't know if it was that first night. And Ken was also there that first night, Toastmasters of Sammamish. And I joined the club, and that was in June of 2013. It wasn't but a few weeks later when the president of the club, whose name was Marco de Jager, asked me if I would be the vice president membership for the club. This is how he sold it to me. He said, "We, our club, belong to the Sammamish Chamber of Commerce. And we need someone that can go to the chamber meetings every week and represent our club. But at the same time you're representing our club, you could also talk about your business, your newly formed business." Now, who would turn that down? Would any of you turn that down? I didn't turn it down. And I said, okay, I will go and I'll represent this club. Now, keep in mind, I'd only been a member a month, all right? I probably had given my first speech and that was about it. But I started going to the chamber meetings for the city of Sammamish, and I would get to talk about the club, which everybody was intrigued with. And then I would talk a little bit about my business as well, which they'd go, eh. Now, it turned out that I sort of got this reputation, and I became the Toastmaster lady. If people saw me around town, they'd say, oh, you're the Toastmaster lady. I became this emblem of the Toastmasters of Sammamish and of the Toastmasters program in general. And I enjoyed doing that. And in fact, the city of Sammamish published an article about me in their local newspaper after several months. Now, I don't know if we were getting a lot of members or potential members to the club during that time, but I was having a lot of fun networking, growing my tribe, and meeting a lot of new people. At the end of that year, I was asked if I would become the club president. And this was my reaction, which I have heard from many people since then. Well, if nobody else steps up, I'll do it. What a cop-out. Well, nobody else stepped up, of course, because as soon as someone says, I'm willing to do it, then everybody else kind of stays quiet. So I became, after just a few months as a member of the Toastmasters International and as a member of this club, I became the club president. And gosh, what a joyride that was. There was a lot of challenges. There were a lot of things I didn't know about Toastmasters. In fact, very few things I knew about Toastmasters. But I enjoyed the people I was working with, the people that were in the clubs, such as Kevin and Ken. And I enjoyed seeing the improvement that I was making in myself. Because I joined knowing that I wanted to have more confidence to talk to potential clients in starting this new business, but I had no idea what was in store for me. Well, after a year of being the club president, just as Benny is coming to the end of his first year as the club president, someone approached me, a member of the district, who was in line to be the next district governor. Now we're called district directors, and we have the director term, but then we were governors. And his name was Eric Vaughn, and he came to me. He was going to be, actually, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. It was Jim Sultan. Jim Sultan at the time, he was going to be the new district director. And he called me on the phone, and he was like an icon, right? I was so new to the organization that I knew a few of the top echelon people of the district, but I'd never actually met them personally because they were so beyond me. They were like celebrities, right? But Jim Sultan called me on the phone and asked me if I would serve as an area director. Whoa, this seemed huge. An area director? He explained my responsibilities would be to watch over 5 or 6 clubs and help their officers to achieve the goals that were set up for the clubs to achieve and be a support system. And he told me that he was asking me to do that because Toastmasters of Sammamish had been such a successful club. In fact, we'd been a President's Distinguished Club that year. And Jim said, I see that you've got potential to be a great leader, Jackie, and I really want you to be part of my organization next year as I lead the district. Well, I couldn't really say, okay, if nobody else wants to do it, I'll do it. I had to say yes or no. And I decided to say yes. And so a year, really just a year after becoming a member, I was now going to be an area director. And people were going to be looking to me for direction, and I still felt like I didn't know what I was doing. Well, that same time I became an area director, there was an opportunity to help with an upcoming district conference. And I signed up to be the education chair at a district conference that was going to be a 3-day event at the casino up north, Skagit Valley Casino. And I was in charge of then getting speakers to speak at this event, at this conference. And again, I had to think outside my own network and go find people that could be willing to come in and give presentations to our district members. And it was a 3-day event, so it wasn't just a couple of speakers. I had to get 9 to 12 different speakers. And I crafted this little speech because I was working now on a leadership project. And I had to craft this little speech that could be used as advertisement for this conference. And I would go around at all of these different contests and events that were happening around the district, and I would give this speech. And it was about horse racing. I'd been to my first horse race, and because we were at the casino, the theme was gambling. It was a gambling theme for the conference. And so I would give this speech about this horse race that I attended and how I won $5.16. And people that didn't really know me then still approach me today, all these years later. They say, I remember you. You're the lady that talked about the horse race. And I made some sort of impression that year. But I had the biggest growth opportunity of my life. The area director position taught me so many things because I had to mentor people that I was supposed to be this person who knew everything, and I had no idea. I didn't know anything, but I was willing to step up and say, yes, I'll do this. I know, Andy, I'm at yellow, but I'm going to go way beyond my time, just so you know. Thank you, though. I'm a DTM. That means don't time me. So that means I got the stage and I'm going to take it. Gosh darn it. And so that year as the area director, I learned a lot. But you know what? My personal life was falling apart. Now, this was in 2008, 2009. The dot-com bubble had burst and people were losing their jobs. Businesses were folding. And my business was still so young that I really hadn't had any profitability at that point anyway. And I was finding it very difficult to even get clients at that time because everybody was holding back. They weren't spending money on anything. My husband, by the way, had the largest architectural firm on the East Side for 12 years. He had 3 partners and 30 employees. And when 2008, 2009 hit, even their business went under. In fact, architectural firms were the first to go because construction completely stopped. And so after I finished this tenure as the area director with all of these financial challenges going on as well, then it was Eric Vaughn who approached me, and he was going to be the district governor coming up that upcoming year. And he said, I want you to be my lieutenant governor marketing. This was even bigger than the area director position because this meant I was going to be a district officer. This is the position that Becky is going to this year. It's a different title now. It was called Lieutenant Governor Marketing then, and now it's the club growth director, but the responsibilities were the same, and that was I needed to start new clubs. That was my sole responsibility. And Eric Vaughn said, I see that you have the potential to do this, and I want you to be on my team. Now, this didn't just mean that I was going to be working with Eric, but it meant that traditionally, I was then going to move to the next position, which was Lieutenant Governor Markey, and then eventually I was going to be the district governor. And I could see this is huge. Now, I said yes, even though I had to think about it for a little while because I had to realize, could I possibly do this? I had a business I was trying to run, and we were having financial problems. Is this fair to my family to take this distraction? Is the way I was thinking about it. But I said yes, and I started working really hard to create new clubs. And I very distinctly recall it was a few days after Christmas of 2010. And like many nights, I was not sleeping. As the lieutenant governor marketing, I had all these things going on. It was so much organization, and the district was depending on me to make them grow, forming new clubs. And I was up early one morning, I don't know, 3 or 4 a.m., working on the computer, which was like many nights. And I could see through the front door window, out in the driveway, there was some lights flashing. And I thought, well, that's weird. Is somebody being taken to the hospital? I thought maybe one of my neighbors was hurt or sick. And I looked out, I ran to the door and looked out. And it was a tow truck. And they were taking my car. My car was being repossessed. And I had to be someplace that morning to start a club. I think it was at Microsoft. What was I going to do? I cried on the couch for a little while, borrowed a car, and I got to that meeting, tried to hide the sadness, the complete desolation I was feeling. And I told people how wonderful Toastmasters was, and it was a great organization and how they could benefit from it, and they should start a club. And I meant what I was saying. But I also had to go home knowing that we were about to lose our home. It wasn't going to be ours much longer, and now my car was gone. And yet I had this responsibility. My fellow Toastmasters, I will tell you, at that time, people thought I was nuts. People that were not involved with Toastmasters were telling me, why are you working with this volunteer organization? You're not getting anything out of it. You're not making any money from this, and your business is suffering, and your husband's business is falling. You know, they had to lay off 30 employees, and his partners jumped ship, and we weren't making a house payment for months because we were helping the business to survive. We wanted to pay the employees. So we weren't taking a salary and eating through our savings. And so at some point, it was all going to come falling down. And then in January of 2011, just a few weeks after my car was repossessed, so was my husband's car. And we had to move because the bank was going to take the house. And an opportunity came up. A friend of ours owned a home that was becoming vacant. And he said, you can move into here, and we didn't need to do a credit check or anything like that, thank goodness, because we would have failed. So we moved out of the home that we thought we were going to live in the rest of our life, where our daughter was married and where our kids had graduated from high school, and we had to leave that home and move to a place we never wanted to live. But it was supposed to be temporary, so it was going to be okay. So in the middle of the busiest time for me as a lieutenant governor marketing, I had to move. Now here's the great news. We had a wonderful friend who had a car sitting in their driveway that wasn't being used. And he gave it to me. Literally just gave me a car. And then when my car was auctioned off, we got a little money from that allowed us to buy a small car for my husband to have. So somehow we had transportation again, and I could get where I needed to go. But I told, as I was working now toward moving up to the second position, Lieutenant Governor Marketing, where my whole responsibility would be to give conferences and to do training for officers and to make sure that we were meeting the milestones of education achievement in the district. It was assumed that I was going to move forward, but I told the incoming district director, I said, I don't know if I can do this. we're in financial trouble. And I said, if something doesn't change for me in the next month, I'm not gonna be able to do this. Well, I got a client. Yay! I got a dentist that hired me to come in and coach him and help him save his practice. It was having trouble, as every business was. And he hired me. And after a few months, and so I said, okay, I'm going to stay with Toastmasters. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to do this. I can do this. And then I coached this dentist so well to find his joy in life and find what he really wanted to do that he decided he didn't want to be a dentist anymore. and so he closed his practice and I lost my client. And then the person that was supposed to be in the next position above me quit. And then somebody else quit. And I was thinking about quitting, and I didn't want to do that to the next district governor. So I stayed on, and I kept working hard. And you know what? There were days when I didn't want to get out of bed. And if I didn't have Toastmasters, I wouldn't have. It wasn't just challenging me financially and emotionally, but it was challenging me physically. I had to wear a heart monitor for a month because my heart was doing weird things. And I was having these crazy panic attacks. And it wasn't because of Toastmasters, but I was also losing my faith. I felt worthless. I felt that I had no value. What was I really offering people? What was I doing? And so I was losing more than just the physical home and the cars and my sanity, but I was losing myself a little bit. But you know what? I honestly say, and I have said this before and we'll say it again, it was Toastmasters that kept me going. Because that's where I got my value. That's where I felt that I had something worthwhile to do. And without that dedication and commitment, gosh, I would have given up and I would have had nothing. And so I kept going and I became the district director or the district governor. And I led a wonderful team of people as a volunteer. And I continued to expand my network, and I learned what it was like to truly be a leader. And it was like leading a small corporation of 5,000 employees. Who gets an opportunity to do that? Most people don't. But I did. And it taught me so many things. In fact, I'd started to write a book about the same time I'd become an area director. And with all of the Toastmaster busyness that I was involved in, I never had time to write. And after I finished my year as the district governor, I started to pick up that book again. And you know what? I had a different book to write because now I was a different leader. I was a completely different person. And so I wrote a different book and I published it that year. And it's called Self-Centered Leadership, and it's about becoming influential and intentional and exceptional. And that we all have to be that type of leader before we can lead others. And it's about 4 principles that I believe every exceptional leader must possess. And that is sacrifice, empowerment of others, love, and friendship. And those are all principles that I learned in my journey of leadership as a Toastmaster. And as I became the immediate past district director, then I got the opportunity to lead up these committees to do the alignment and protocol for the district and nominations for new officers and a whole different toolkit of leadership. I did that for a year. And then in 2015, I was eligible to finally compete again in contests. And I decided that was going to be my year. I wanted to get on the world stage. I wanted to be the world champion of public speaking. This was going to be my time. So I wrote a speech. And I started giving that speech. And it was about love. It was about forgiveness and how I'd worked through my years as a child being chronically abused by family members and friends, and how love sustained me through my healing process, and how I was able to forgive all of those who'd abused me and face them and tell them so. As I gave this speech, I started winning. I won at the club level, at the area level, and at the division level, and I even won at the district level, and I was going to the world stage. But then, as I was practicing that summer to give that speech in the semifinals in Las Vegas in August, I was speaking everywhere I could. I was going to 100 clubs that summer to practice this speech. And then people started saying, you know what? That speech can't be given at an international situation because it's talking about child abuse. Some of these countries that you're talking to, they grasp that. It's part of their tradition. It's what they do. You can't tell them about that. It's not going to work. And I started to second guess my message. And I started to try to change it so it was a little more happy and it was a little more cheerful. So I could talk about abuse that way, you know? And I wasn't successful. It was very hard to be authentic that way. And in fact, 10 days before the competition, I gave the speeches I'd been working on, 2 speeches, and I gave them both at one meeting. And the feedback was brutal. I felt like I was being publicly flogged. I wasn't ready, not good, can't do it. And so on the way to Las Vegas, on the airplane, I wrote 2 new speeches. Speeches I had never given in front of an audience. Now, keep in mind, I had practiced all summer at 100 different clubs, got an audience reaction, knew what worked, knew what didn't. And now I'm going to give a speech that I'd never given before. It was crazy. And it was because I second guessed myself. So that day I get on that international stage, I'm in the semifinals, and there's 9 competitors. I'm the only woman in my semifinal. I'm thinking, awesome. At least I'm going to stand out. I'm going to be different. Got up on that stage. And at that very moment, I realized where I was. I realized that the organization I belonged to had gotten me to this position where I was on a huge stage in front of 2,000 people. And I was giving a speech. They were going to hear my voice throughout the world. And I realized what was happening. And at that moment I said, gosh darn it, I'm just going to have fun. I don't care what happens. This is amazing. And I gave a mediocre speech. And I didn't place. I didn't go further in the competition. And I was really disappointed because I thought it was my year. But you know what happened is because I listened to too many people who told me I should be inauthentic. I shouldn't be who I wanted to be. And I should have a different message that I wanted to share. That was a mistake. A mistake I've not repeated since and won't repeat again. But I come back to the reason I joined, watching Jeannie Robertson on that stage where she could take me through so many emotions and experiences in one speech. And there I was on a similar stage, hoping to provide the same thing for my audience, and it had come full circle for me. I had become, in some way, Jeannie Robertson. And it was because of this organization that that happened for me. You know, when you sign up to be a Toastmaster, you make a pledge. You pledge that when you are asked to be a club officer, you will say yes. You pledge that you will support your club to the best of your ability. And when I hear people say, you know what, I'd like to help, but I just can't do it. I have too many things going on. I have a business to run. I'm looking for a job. Too many crazy things going on in the world. I can't possibly add one more thing. I don't say I feel angry, but I chuckle a little bit because that is what helped me grow. If I had said, it's not the right time to lead, not the right situation, then I would never have grown. I would have never had the good with all that bad. Toastmasters wouldn't have kept me alive, would have made me feel valuable. So, my fellow club members, what I'm asking you to do today is to consider that you have this potential that others see that maybe you can't, just like everyone who asked me to serve and take another position. And I thought, yeah, no way. But because I said yes, I've been on the greatest journey I could possibly imagine. And it wasn't because I had the money, wasn't because I had the time, wasn't because I had the skill or the know-how. It wasn't because I had nothing else to do. It was because I wanted to serve. And that's all it takes, is a desire to help. We're going to have an officer election today. And I want you to really think about what you can do and how you can serve in a very small way that will have huge, huge amounts of positivity, empowerment, and love in your life. Sacrifice, empowerment, love, and friendship. We get it all from Toastmasters. We could all be self-centered leaders. And that is my plea to you today. Be more than you are right now. Step up. It's time. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Jackie. What a great speech. So inspirational and so much emotion up and down on the roller coaster. I just really enjoyed that speech. Invoked a lot of emotion for me and beautiful story. Thank you so much for being so vulnerable about your hardships and struggles too.